WCEG Network on WCEG Talk Radio.com. Click the live stream tab or watch us live on your smart TV, YouTube, WCEG Network. I'm Dr. Wanzo. I'm your show host of Mind Matters for the next hour. Sorry. Something popped up, I'm sorry. We're the worldwide community empowerment group where we speak life into the community. Like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter and on Instagram at WCEG _talk _radio and at WCEG Network. Last but not least, the topics and opinions are those of the show host and guests and not WCEG Network. Thank you for your continued support. Again, welcome to Mind Matters, where we discuss relevant mental health issues. I'm your host, Dr. Cassandra Wanzo. I'm a psychiatrist, and I've been practicing in Atlanta for the past 30 years. Our co-hosts are Norm Carter Jr. He's a retired, hey Norm, Philadelphia police corporal. He's written a book that's very, very relevant to our times. It's titled The Long Blue Walk, My Journey as a Philly Cop. It's available on Amazon. He also hosts his own show on WCEG, Issues and Answers, on Mondays at 4 p.m. Hi, Norm.
Hello, Howard Doctor. How are you?
Okay. And if Mr. Paul DesVignes signs in, then we'll be known as the Doc and Two Cops. Our topic this evening is pandemic fatigue, part 2. Again, pandemic fatigue, part 2. COVID-19 has infected more than 70 million people in the United States. It's killed more than 865,000 people in the United States. And it's brought much of daily life around the globe to a stuttering halt. Can you believe it? We are approaching year number 3 of this pandemic. Americans' frustration grows as the pandemic continues. Last week, we introduced a type of burnout that experts are calling pandemic fatigue in the last show. And so we're continuing with that in part 2. And what are the signs of pandemic fatigue? As we discussed, the signs of pandemic fatigue are feeling tired, even after getting enough sleep, lack of motivation, feeling like you have no purpose, snapping at loved ones, feeling isolated and depressed, a decline in compliance with mask wearing and social distancing, feeling overwhelmed. On top of all that's going on, scientists are saying that COVID is here to stay. One expert from the Mayo Clinic predicted your great-great-great-grandchildren will still be getting immunized against coronavirus. He predicts coronavirus will be around for the next century, just like the influenza is from the 1918 pandemic. Wow. Any thoughts about that?
That's just scary to think about.
Mm-hmm.
But that means that we have to adjust our living. I remember when I was young, how the not just the country but the world was gripped with fear of polio.
Mhm.
And now we hardly hear anything about polio.
That's true.
But that was due to mass vaccinations. People weren't as smart then as they are now, so they followed the doctor's instructions and got the vaccine. Now people are smarter, and 865,000 of them are dead.
Exactly. I remember we had the little ice, the sugar cubes that we had to take with the vaccine. You're right. Everybody, believed the scientists and went along with it. You see,
Yes.
they had that march in Washington this past weekend.
I missed that.
I'm not sure. There were several thousand people, and they were marching against mandates, vaccines.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Right.
Yes,
and the chief's spokesperson was Robert Kennedy Jr.
Correct. Yeah.
And he likened this whole the mandates and the vaccine to Nazi Germany. He went back to that Nazi and compared it to the Holocaust again.
Yeah, and I think that he apologized for that.
He did.
Yeah, he apologized for that.
Yeah, he did.
It's funny that people don't realize that the difference between us and Nazi Germany, which is fact, is that in Nazi Germany, they prohibited people from taking vaccines.
Okay.
When they had vaccines available. So it's sort of a false narrative that
it is.
certain people who don't know history are just throwing out there.
Right. You don't know history, you don't know science. The thing that when I was looking at some of the footage, the people were there with no masks, and they had children there too, and all these thousands of people. So you can imagine, that's like an event that's going to a super spreader event, really.
Well, I think was it Miss Palin was a part of that madness, and she went to an event unmasked, and they were celebrating. It was a big group, and now she's come down with COVID.
Wow.
So it's just it's just a parade of foolishness, and it's sad because people who are immunocompromised are the ones who are suffering.
Yes, like the people who admitted to the hospital that are dying on the ventilators, right? And the people who are not vaccinated. I know with some of my patients, every day I talk to them about getting vaccinated, and the majority of them have not been vaccinated and have no plans to get vaccinated. These are like mental health patients, the chronically mentally ill in that clinic that I work with. Like I told you, 2 in one day said, "Oh, I'm immune to that. I'm immune to that." 2 in a row had told me that they're immune to it. They
my goodness.
don't have to understand. You try to educate them, but they just don't understand. So I have some concerns about them. Again, that's one reason why I'm not going into the clinic anymore. I'm only doing telepsychiatry because I was in the clinic with them and they're not vaccinated. And the whole time I'm telling you to pull the mask up, because they have to have a mask to come in. But the whole time I'm telling you to pull it up. And so once Omicron came out, then I decided only to telepsychiatry. So I'm not even going into the clinic anymore to protect myself and loved ones. So
sure, it's sad, but I understand the fatigue. But as I always say, fatigue is temporary, death is final.
It is. Yes, you're right.
And that's the other part. And people who fail to vaccinate themselves, we have our children under 5 who are now catching this disease, and they have no protection. Right.
You've heard of several infants contracting it and dying. That's so sad.
It was a kid featured on TV last week. I think he's 1 year old. He was put on a ventilator. He's alive now, but you can't imagine an infant being put on a ventilator.
I can't imagine that. Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. Simply amazing.
A lot of physicians are getting burnt out. I was looking at some statistics about that. So last year, 42% of physicians were burned out. This year, it's 47%. And then when you look by specialty, 60% of emergency room physicians are burned out because of the pandemic. 60% of emergency room physicians.
That's a lot.
Right.
Because how do you replace those people?
Exactly.
How do you replace those? And this is all because of the millions and millions of people, tens of millions, who refuse to to get the shot, to get vaccinated, and to protect themselves by wearing a mask and taking all the other protective measures that we can take.
Yeah, so physicians are not the only ones experiencing burnout. Say teachers, they're saying, more and more teachers, are leaving because they're burnt out. I guess law enforcement too, as well. I mean, I'm sure.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely. It's funny. Some people were upset with me because someone from my church put out a group text about it was a false protective measure that people could take. Is a debunked measure that people could take for preventing COVID-19. And it sounded silly to me just looking at it. So I did some research on it and found it to be false. And it didn't take long to find out that was a debunked theory that was put out there. It had to do with eating certain types of fruits to increase your pH balance. Oh, okay. And if you had a high pH balance in your blood, that is supposed to ward off COVID-19. But that's false. Right. So I countered that, and some people got very upset because they got upset with the facts. And I don't know why we live in a time when people are embracing deception and ignoring science and facts. Right. It's topsy-turvy. It's the bizarro world where everything is upside down.
So yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with that. Oh, somebody else put nurses are leaving in droves. So I think it's affecting so many different people. And you see, then like when they had during the holiday, all the flights that had to be canceled, because people were out sick, and then restaurants are closing down, businesses are being forced to operate, at a smaller capacity. I saw another statistic said the Omicron death toll has now surpassed the height of deaths caused by the Delta variant. It's now surpassed it.
Wow. Snuck up on us quickly. But it's like the Bible talks about the thief in the night. Forewarned is forearmed. This is something you can't see coming. It's a shame.
I was glad to see that they finally, issued the free at home COVID test that you could order, and so
I'm waiting for mine in the mail.
Oh, I'm waiting for mine too. You're right. I did order it, but I'm waiting for it to come.
Yeah, I ordered that first. I was one of the first 19 million.
Right. That was like whatever the day before it was supposed to go live.
Right. Yeah. A Tuesday. It was the last Tuesday.
I think so. So you're right. I haven't received mine yet. So how long is it going to take? Wow. So I see someone put that flights have been impacted through 2023 still.
It's going to hurt and I understand that people feel like they've been kept down and kept away from doing things, but it's the way that we have to live right now. And are we that stuck on the pleasures, quote, of life that we can't sacrifice a little bit by pulling back a little bit? Children are very adaptable. They're more adaptable than adults. And we just want to keep our little playthings. We want to keep going out to bars. We want to keep going out to sporting events. And those things are dangerous. And then when you have some of the high political officials, like your former president, holding these mass rallies for people, and no one is masked, and they continually flaunt the disease and the policies that help to protect us from those disease. This is why this continues to get worse and worse, and this is why people are continuing to die. And these people literally have blood on their hands for what they're doing.
So they're saying it's only 63% of people are fully vaccinated. So it's until everybody gets vaccinated, so we probably won't be able to loosen up in the mask wearing or physical distancing.
And the sad part about that is, while there are countries who are in need of a vaccine, we're throwing vaccine away because it's expired.
Yes.
And they can't use it.
Yes.
So how horrendous is that?
And then someone pointed out that there are people selling fake vaccination cards, and they're getting busted here. But
a lot of your professional football players have been using fake vax cards. Some of them have been caught.
Okay. And then you have several professional athletes, basketball, football, who refuse to get vaccinated. I guess it's like Kyrie Irving can only play at away games because he's not vaccinated. And so I guess he has to pay a fine or something for that. So much.
Yep, you have him. You have Aaron Rodgers, who's not vaccinated.
God. I know.
Yeah, I know. You don't want to talk about him. I know.
Oh my God. Yes. And he lied. Well, he basically lied about it and consulted some comedian, Seth Rogen, and was doing all these, I don't know, homeopathic types of things, saying he was naturally vaccinated through whatever these means were, but he lied. He wasn't vaccinated.
Yeah, it's a shame.
It's interesting. Several other of the players, NFL players, they got sanctions, but nothing ever happened to him. He was able to get away with it.
Yeah, once you let one person go, then you lose your legitimacy, and then you can't do anything to anybody. And that's the problem that they have. So they're out there huffing and breathing on each other and passing it along joyfully as they make their millions of dollars.
And I see that there's some counties in Georgia, schools that are now saying that the masks are optional, no longer mandatory. I forgot which counties were, but
that's on the news today, this evening.
Yeah, some kind. I mean, how can you even imagine that? I know my sister was a teacher, and that's how she came down with it, because she found out the teacher that she was covering for was out with COVID, and then she's here in the classroom with the same students, and I don't understand why there's no period of quarantine.
It's all political.
Yeah. Oh, and then the athlete Novak Djokovic, whatever.
Yes. Also known as the Joker. Yeah. Yeah.
Yes.
He is an arrogant example of what we're talking about. I mean, he knows he lied also, but he is adamant about not taking the vaccine. And he has a lot of supporters.
Wow.
He's a national hero in Serbia.
Wow.
They're supporting him. But in the meantime, of course, he's already a multimillionaire, but he's losing. This is costing him millions of dollars because his sponsors are pulling away from him. The people who sponsor him are pulling away.
So what's he like, the number one seed or something?
He's number one in the world.
Wow. Yeah, I had never heard of him before all of this. I'd never heard of him.
Oh my goodness, yes. He's very, very good. The number two guy, Nadal, is playing there in Australia now. But they have constant battles back and forth, those two.
Okay. Someone said you can't replace your children. Schools should rethink that move. I agree. You can't replace children.
We have other options. And I hear this thing about children in school, and I don't know whether I said this on the other program, because if you're insisting that your children have to be in school because being at home is handcuffs them or restricts their ability to socialize with people, then all of those parents who have been homeschooling their children are dummies, because they've been homeschooling children for years now, without computers and with computers. So, as I said, children can adapt they adapt better than adults.
Mm.
And we're just moving into a new age, and we have adults who they're letting their politics get in the way of their common sense.
Exactly. Someone says Cobb County is one of the systems where masks are optional. I just don't know how they can do that.
Yeah, well, that's a heavily Republican area.
Oh, okay. Like
Yeah.
some of the things, like some of the marchers, when they were interviewing them, they were saying,
Oh, it's blue now. Sorry.
oh yeah, some
Okay.
of the parents, like when they were there with the kids, at the march, they were saying that the kids shouldn't wear masks because it caused them depression and it caused all kind of adverse psychological effects. And they were making these wild claims, about the children, but we know that that's not true. It's not true.
It's not true.
But
It's not true.
they were claiming it caused all kind of psychological harm and depression in the kids. But you said, what about death? Somebody said, what about death? Yeah. What about these parents?
There's nothing more depressing than death.
Exactly.
I don't care what your religion is.
Okay. So,
See, we have someone joining us now.
Yes. Officer Paul. Welcome. We can't hear you.
Hey, Doc.
Hey, welcome.
Hey, Norm.
Hello, how are you, Paul?
I am wonderful. Hi, WCEG family.
So
welcome to the conversation.
Yes, well, it's pandemic fatigue part 2. You have any thoughts or inputs on pandemic fatigue?
Pandemic fatigue.
Yeah. Could be people getting burned out by the fact that we're approaching year 3 of this pandemic. They're feeling depressed, anxious, snappy, don't want to wear masks, don't want to do social distancing. It's the pandemic fatigue.
I'm burned out by middle age.
Hey, you're getting into some of the best years of your life, sir.
Some of the best years.
Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. I'm gonna have what Norm is having.
Yeah, I think it's funny. I guess this is off the subject, but I know that I'm past middle age because some newscaster was describing someone who was my age and they called them elderly. So I felt real bad about that.
Wow.
So I guess I'm out of middle age.
So you're not quite over the hill yet.
Not over the hill yet. No. Still have my dancing shoes.
Your boogie shoes?
I got my boogie shoes. Yes, sir.
So Paul, you have any thoughts on pandemic fatigue?
Hey, listen, I like the way Norm put it. I don't, my fatigue is physical, but man, Norm hit it right on the head. It's about attitude, how you really adjust to it, right?
Exactly.
It's not like it's targeting any one set of groups of people.
Mm-hmm.
Last time I checked, COVID don't discriminate. So
that's true, right? That's true.
Yeah, we're all in this together for real type situation.
Exactly.
So, I think really this is where your attitude and who you are and accepting reality for what it is and understanding that there are protocols and responsibilities for us all that we have to maintain to be safe.
But some people, they're just so burned out. They're tired of wearing masks. They're tired of social distance. They're just tired of doing it all. And they're not, being adherent because they're just tired of it all. Because this is year number 3 that we're in now of the pandemic.
Well, if they end up just crumbing the COVID, they don't have to worry about it no more.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So, with all due respect, I just understand that people are tired, but there's a difference between being tired and being responsible.
Exactly.
So I don't see how anybody can sit there and say they're the only ones being victimized by this.
Mm-hmm.
We are all in this together.
Mm-hmm.
As I always say, I find myself, not every day, but on many days of the week, I find myself some good music. Unashamedly, I dance with myself.
Oh, good. That's good.
Or sing to myself. You know, you can't go out and party with a bunch of people, but no reason you can't party with yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Those imaginary dance partners, I'm telling you, they're fantastic. They don't miss a step.
You know, COVID has turned into the unbelievable. Initially, it was the unthinkable, but now for some people, it's still like, I can't believe this is still around. I can't believe this happened. I can't believe the government didn't do anything to resolve this already. Oh, I mean, if you keep
hold on 1 second.
One less concern you have.
Yeah. So Paul, before you came, I was quoting how they're saying that COVID is here to stay. And one expert from Mayo Clinic said, this is his prediction. He said, your great grandchildren will still be getting immunized against coronavirus. He predicts coronavirus will be around for the next century, just like the influenza from the 1918 pandemic is still here. So that's what he's predicting. It's going to be around for the next century. Wow.
Yeah, well, I mean, if there ever was a time to file a complaint to God, I think this is it.
File a complaint to God?
Yeah, I think that's the only person that now can really rectify this gross injustice against humanity.
Well, I think.
I mean, let's face it. It's part of our lives now.
It is. It's part of our lives.
It's every day for real. Get up. You have to have your PPEs on. You have to get your boosters or your first shot. You have to realize that there's nothing that can be done about it.
Right. It's the new norm. It's the new norm. Right. Because frankly, I thought, okay, well, when it first started, so like in my office, I started seeing people virtually. So I figured, okay, in about 6 months, I can start back seeing people in the office. Nope. It's like you said, going on year 3 and I'm still doing it virtually. So I don't know if we'll ever be able to have a time where, I can see people face to face, but year 3, still seeing people virtually. I was saying earlier in the clinic, I was seeing the consumers in the clinic, on Cleveland Avenue, but most of them are not vaccinated. I talked to them and they're saying, oh, I'm immune to it. And when they come in, you have the mask, on their chin. I have to keep telling them to pull it up. So like I said, for that reason, I'm no longer seeing them in the clinic either. So everything I'm doing is all virtual, all telepsychiatry. If you told me this 3 or 4 years ago that I'd be doing all telepsychiatry, I was like, what, are you nuts? No, I would have never imagined this scenario, but that's what it is. Yeah, now all telepsychiatry. Like I said, I'm having to see some people on Sunday because I have so many people that, wanting to be seen. I mean, I never get like 3 or 4 new people, in a day who want, to be seen. And so I'm having to, book until Sundays to spill over from Saturday. I've never been busy. I've never seen anything like this.
Wow.
In all my
scary part.
Years of practicing, all my years, 30 years, I've never seen anything like this.
So how's this affecting the consumers who already have compromised mental health issues?
Well, they, for the most part, are not voicing a lot of concerns. It's more of like in my private practice where I see the people who are like, because they're out there working and having to function, because most of our consumers, basically, are home and not really doing much. But the people in my office, I'm prescribing more meds for depression, more meds for anxiety, to tell you the truth, more antidepressants and more anxiety meds.
Wow.
People are depressed and anxious. Right.
Yep.
Yeah. So actually, last time I said I was going to talk about some ways to cope with pandemic fatigue. And so the first area I want to discuss is seeking mental health care. If you're having persistent feelings of anxiety and depression, like that are lasting weeks, or if you're experiencing suicidal ideation, please seek help. The suicide prevention lifeline is 1-800-273-TALK, which is 1-800-273-8255, or you can text HOME, HOME, to the crisis text line, which is 741-741. Again, the suicide prevention lifeline is 1-800-273-TALK, which is 1-800-273-8255, or text HOME to the crisis text line at 741-741. Seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Another way to help cope is to find ways to stay and be connected with other people, whether it's Zoom, FaceTime, Duo. Like myself, my grandson, grandson and I, we have FaceTime every day, and he's 4 months, so we FaceTime every day. He's 4 months, and of course, his mom and dad too. So it's really his mom and dad and him that we because I used to go by there once a week, but now that I'm home and no longer in the clinic, I deal with it by FaceTime. So if you can Zoom, FaceTime, whatever, it's important to maintain that contact so you don't feel isolated. Here's something that's very, very important that I think y'all kind of touched on earlier. Maintain hope. I can't say that enough. Above all else, maintain hope. After the storm comes a calm. Nothing will last forever, including this pandemic. The only thing that lasts forever is your soul.
And where did that quote come from?
Amen.
Okay, apparently they never paid taxes. Oh boy.
Well, you was to say death and taxes, right? The only true things, right?
Man, that boy, I don't know. Taxes was right up there with COVID for me.
The other thing that's important to do is creating a schedule. When you create a routine and have some structure, it helps you to have a sense of direction, so you feel like you're not just aimlessly going through the day. So create a schedule, some structure, a routine. The next thing to do is focus on what you can control. When things are out of order in the world, that's the perfect time to focus on things that you can control in your inner world, your thoughts, your habits, your beliefs. It can also be things in your life like working out, what you eat, so you do have control over those things. The next thing to do is practice positive affirmations. By that, I mean, think of the positive things in your life. Focus on the things that you have and not the things that you don't have. Focus on what you can do and not on what you can do. Another important thing is gratitude, to identify at least 3 things every day that you're grateful for, and spend like a minute on each one thinking about it. Because when you're feeling grateful, you can't feel angry or fearful when you're feeling grateful. Another thing you can do is setting boundaries for media and the social media. In the media, they said, if it bleeds, it leads. So in other words, the news, they focus on the negativity. So if you watch too much CNN or Fox or whatever you watch, that can affect your inner well-being. So you need to limit the regular media as well as what you see on social media as well. So limit, what you feed into your mind is what you end up, being. So be careful what you watch on TV and watching too much social media, because you can become depressed just watching the news or, focusing on social media. So for myself, what I've decided to do is on my Facebook page, only post positive, uplifting things. And one of the things I've been posting lately is a lot of pictures of my 4-year-old grandson smiling face. I mean, at one time I was thinking maybe I was posting too much. And in one day, 3 people basically said the same thing. They said that all that's going on, seeing his smiling face just uplifted them and to keep posting. So I'm still posting.
Sure.
It's a baby smiling face. And my grandson is always smiling. So posting his smiling face, and people told me to keep posting. So I'm going to keep it up because they said it brightens their spirits. Another thing that's important to do is to continue to follow preventive measures. While there are COVID-19 vaccines, they are 95% effective, which means there's still a 5% chance for infection. And it's also unclear whether the vaccination prevents transmission. That's why mask wearing is still important if you're vaccinated. So until everybody gets vaccinated, we won't be able to loosen up the mask wearing mandates or physical distancing. As I mentioned earlier, only 63% of people are fully vaccinated. The last thing I have in my list is to prioritize self-care, taking care of yourself. Make sure you get plenty of sleep, enough exercise, and eating a nutritious diet and drinking water. So those are my keys to helping you to cope with pandemic fatigue. Any thoughts, comments?
I have some of the same things, but I'm focusing on the positive. And I know you mentioned that. And I was just going through my mind as you were speaking that 5 years ago, just 5 years ago, teleconference meetings were prohibitively expensive to do.
Oh.
All of a sudden, technology affords us the luxury of Zoom. And shortly thereafter, we're smacked with the COVID outbreak. So we actually had a remedy before we had the problem. We just didn't know that we would be utilizing Zoom as much as we are using it now. And it's not free, but it's cheap. It's cheap.
You're right. 3 years ago, I never even heard of Zoom. I knew what Zoom was now. They're Zooming everything. I have attended several funerals by Zoom, all kind of events, by Zoom that I guess I never even heard of Zoom. But you're right. All of our, because, in the clinic, we used to have daily team meetings. So now every morning, our team meetings are by Zoom every morning. So we have our standing team meeting by Zoom.
Yeah, it's remarkable. And as you said before, you have to look at what you have, because if you get stuck on what you don't have,
exactly,
you're going down.
Exactly,
you're going down.
Yeah,
and it helps. And we have before us so many means of. When you think about the pandemic of 1918, those people had no television.
Yes,
there was no teleconferencing. They made it. They made it through. Not everybody, but they made it through. So we can get through this. We have a lot more going for us now than those people had then. And
I don't know. 1918, technology probably hurt us as much as it helped us. 1918, there was no, how should I say, no source of information to the vastness that we have now, which means that even the good information was limited, but also kept the bad information down.
True.
And one of the biggest problems, back in those days, your local newspaper was your main source of communication with the inside and outside world. Now, the world is such a smaller place. And there's like a gazillion different sites you can go to with such bad negative information that influence people. You would think will be smart enough not to listen to some of the sources that they read or come across on social media or any other non-authorized site.
Correct. Absolutely.
The government, to a certain extent, was responsible for that, creating, allowing that so much to happen. And I'm not trying to push it on anyone's administration, but instead of being honest in front and saying, hey, listen, we hit with something totally new we weren't prepared for. we're hit with something that we're still trying to understand. More important, it's going to affect all our lives in such a way now. We're still trying to figure this thing out, but we have got to work together. We did just the opposite.
Okay.
We proceeded in terms of fear. We proceeded in terms of ignorance, and we proceeded in terms of listening to every non-credible source that hurt more people than it helped people. You know, at one point, I remember when it first started, and in the African and American community, we were actually telling each other we didn't have to worry about covert because genetically, covert doesn't affect us.
Oh, that's what they did. Right.
And then we became the highest mortality rate group
exactly.
because we just foolishly believed something biologically about us. We were immune to something that nature produced, or hell, or conspiracy theorists to say will produce in the lab. Either way, you're affected by it. You know, I think more access to information, especially bad information, is probably hurting us more in the 21st century than it hurt them in 1918 in the 20th century.
Wow.
One thing you have to remember is that one of the first things that President Trump did when he came into office was to disband the pandemic response unit that President Obama had established.
That's right. He did. Yes.
So we were operating in the blind with people who didn't know what they were doing on a high level.
Wow. Yeah.
So let's not do what they want us to do and forget real history, because it's recent history.
You know, we the people became victims of the very individuals we elected to protect us from. And let's say, thank God it was an alien invasion, because we would already be prisoners of war by now.
Yeah.
So
a lot of misinformation.
You just mentioned, right, live streaming church service, right? So that's something we're doing now, church services, and you can go back and look at it just like your Netflix or whatever. You go back and look at it again. So that's something that I mean, personally, that I've become accustomed to, is being able to live stream the church services.
It's funny you should say church services, because I'll be honest with you, and correct me if I'm wrong, anybody, whether part of the CEG family or my fellow peers, you guys, I don't think the Black churches did enough, especially in our community, to really use their resources and platform, not only to dispel rumors, but to educate early and to open. Those that open up testing sites and now didn't jump on a bandwagon till it became like the so-called right thing to do. But again, we still have a long way to go in prioritizing what is important in our community. And once again, the very individuals, not just elected officials, but also our clergy, fail to say, hey, listen, we got something serious to work with here. Especially some of the larger name, the mega churches and so-called, every pastor wants to put his name on something. But a lot of you guys got to realize you got people following you. Even in our community, we could have probably dispelled a lot of rumors and moved forward and really had an edge on this thing before we became the number one morality group for a minute, because mortality rates were just rising in the Black community at one point. Our house of worships and those who lead them failed to step up early and be like, listen, we got something going on here.
Well, wait a minute, you can't put all churches in the category. I have to say, that the church that Penny and I attend, our pastor stepped up early, very early on, and offered mass testing sites early on. They stepped up early on. So it's not all churches.
And that's wonderful. But see, this is where instead of individual churches doing it, it should have been our quick assembling of all churches that really preside over our community. It should have been communication across whatever belief lines are, and say, hey, listen, houses of worship are where people come for comfort during times of crisis.
Well, you have to remember that churches are a reflection of who we are.
Exactly.
And just as we are running helter-skelter, you have that same thing is with the churches. They're running helter-skelter. And there are organizations of groups, but there's, for the most part, especially with Black churches, there's no hotline, minister hotline. And you got some buddy ministers who talk to each other, but there's no hotline for Black ministers to get in touch with each other and corporately meet together and make decisions for the benefit of all their congregations. That doesn't exist.
Exactly.
It's not like we have the Pope for the Catholic religion, who sets down his encyclicals and people jump to that. We don't have that.
Yeah.
Well, COVID has showed us we need to develop it. We truly need a unified command center during times of crisis and trauma, because at this point, and I understand the social distancing. I understand we had to isolate ourselves for the safety, but you still had access. Let's go back to Zoom. Let's go back to social media. Let's go back to all of these sites from Instagram and stuff. That messages now should be like, hey, this is what we need to do. All this, there has to be a unified system in our communities now, where instead of we still acting as individuals, got to act as a complete community.
Okay, who would be that leader?
Exactly.
And that's what the problem is now. Who would be that leader? Because now we create a whole nother dynamics. But in actuality, I don't even want to look at it who's a leadership structure. I want to look at a platform now, just like the early warning system. When we have hurricane, tornado, these were developed during the Cold War. We have fallout shelters and stuff like that. There have to be an early warning system or a official information outlet, not even to say we understand and we going to resolve whatever the crisis is, but now create a situation where we work hard to keep people calm first, even if we don't have information.
But the health department, CDC, things like that, those are the ones that are responsible for coordinating health efforts. Although a lot of the church has partnered with the CDC to do vaccines and testing. They did with the Department of Health. So the churches did coordinate with the CDC and Department of Health.
That was well after the fact. That was well after, and that's ongoing right now. What I'm trying to say is, churches are not responsible for the medical part. I'm not holding churches responsible for the governmental responsibility. What I'm saying is churches can aid in calming people and dispelling a lot of misinformation, because there's still people that huge parts of congregations. And mind you, and it's not about trying to say the church have a responsibility to resolve it, but that's just one tool. That's one more tool to help calm people. That would, as we talk about tonight, some people are even blaming, saying, well, God is upset with us and everything is this happening because God is not happy the way mankind's been living. This is where the church steps in and say, hey, listen, this is
those like those right-wing conservative type things who talk about punishment, damnation. Now they're in a whole different realm, but the Black churches have stepped up and they're doing things. They're still doing things now. So you can't put everybody all in one category. You just can't put everybody in one category.
Yeah, and one thing I'd like to interject here is that at my own little church, I took on the responsibility of bringing in CDC printouts once I began to hear a lot of misinformation being communicated within my church. So it's up to the individual church and the people within that church to perform that function. We have the government to do the overall, be the overall information gatherer and dispenser, but we have a responsibility to take that information and utilize it.
Exactly. they've asked me to like repeat the coping mechanisms. I'm going to go through them all again, ways to cope with the pandemic. The first one was seeking mental health care if you're having persistent feelings of anxiety and depression. I don't mean from day to day, but if it's going on for weeks, and if you're experiencing thoughts of suicide, please get help. And then I gave the suicide prevention lifeline, which is 1-800-273-TALK, which is 1-800-273-8255. Again, the suicide prevention lifeline is 1-800-273-TALK, which is 1-800-273-8255, or text HOME, HOME, to the crisis text line, which is 741-741. Again, the crisis text line is HOME, HOME, 741-741. And I said that seeking help is a sign of strength, not weakness. Finding ways to stay connected to other people, whether it's through Duo, Zoom, or FaceTime. And the most important thing was maintaining hope above all else, because nothing lasts forever. Even this pandemic will not last forever. So having hope, and that's based on faith. Your faith is very important in these times. The next thing was creating a schedule, creating a routine. Some structure helps you to have a sense of direction, that you are not just aimlessly going through the day. The other thing is to focus on what you can control. When things are out of order in the outer world, that's the time to focus on the inner world, on your thoughts, your beliefs, your habits. Pick things in your life that you have control of, whether it be your workout routine or what you eat. The next thing was practicing positive affirmations, focusing on what you have instead of what you don't have, focusing on what you can do instead of what you can't do. And also being grateful. If you are feeling grateful, it's impossible to be angry and fearful at the same time. So pick 3 things every day that you're grateful for. Spend a minute focusing on each of those things, and that will help you to feel better. Another thing is setting boundaries for media and social media. As I said, the media is based on the principle, if it bleeds, it leads, which means their whole focus is on the negativity. So you want to not allow your mind to consume everything in the media. Turn off CNN or whatever it is, and find other things to do. Also, social media is the same thing. And I was mentioning how I try to post positive things on social media, like my grandson's smiling face, and people have given me feedback that they do find it brightens their spirits seeing his smiling face. Another thing is to continue to follow preventive measures, since we have the vaccines, but they are only 95% effective, which means there's still a 5% chance of infection, and we don't know whether the vaccination prevents transmission or not. That's why wearing masks is still important. And until everybody gets vaccinated, we won't be able to loosen our mask wearing or physical distancing, because at this point, only 63% of people are fully vaccinated. And the last thing that I mentioned was prioritizing self-care, making sure you get enough rest, enough exercise, eating a nutritious diet, which is the fuel for your body, and drinking enough water. So those are the coping mechanisms that someone had asked me to repeat. So any thoughts, other thoughts?
I was just reminded of an old song. Mm-hmm. We talk about self-affirmation and making yourself feel good, even in bad times. Mm-hmm. There was an old song called, I'm gonna sit right down and write myself a letter. Make believe it came from you. Going to make words so sweet. They're going to knock me off my feet. Put some kisses on the bottom, and I'll be glad I got them. So listen, make yourself feel good. Allow yourself to feel good. Mm-hmm. Give yourself a break. Call somebody once a day.
Yes.
Have a good, not text.
Yes. Yeah, you're right, because people text too much.
Yeah. Speak to a human voice once a day.
You're right.
It works.
Paul, you need positive things that you have that people can do to cope?
Wow. I mean, you guys covered it all.
Okay.
For me, it's so much of an individual effort each day. For me, it's about what my purpose is for that day. And I'm finding myself now, I'm finding more satisfaction on my days, focusing on the things that add to my quality of work versus trying to mitigate my work schedule. And the more I focus on what's good for me versus how much I need to put into whatever work, task, or assignment, I'm feeling good about just getting my bucket list done. Even if it's something as simple as cleaning out the garage, I'm enjoying it.
That's how you cope with middle age, sir.
Oh. Did I need to reset my priorities? Oh, wow. I didn't see that one coming.
You answered your own question.
Oh, my God. It's like I'm falling and I can't get up. Thank you, Norm. Oh, my God.
It's easy.
But you know what, guys? That's really that simple thing right there. Finding something to laugh about really does, because even though Norm brought a little reality to me, I'm going to find myself laughing when I'm doing something now. I can like hear Norm in my ear chuckle. You know what you're doing, right?
Yeah.
Something like that will definitely, I mean, we're all so different, but so much the same in reality. It's just sometimes it's just scary to think, wow, why do we have such a hard time getting along in this world with the diversity of it when really we're not that much different in needs, desires, and responsibilities?
Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
So,
and we're all communal beings. We were created that way. And when we don't have that ability to connect physically with each other, this is just what we're talking about right now. So we have ways of perhaps not touching, but at least with communicating with one another. We need to utilize those.
Exactly.
Wouldn't it be really ironic to discover several generations in the future that covert was nature's way of bringing us together? You know, it's almost like saying, hey, this is a common enemy, a common crisis. Better yet, this is the reason to look at all the barriers and ideologies and just idiotic things we do to separate, discriminate, and to dehumanize each other. But covert to show, hey, listen, ain't nobody safe from me. Exactly. No matter who you are, where you're from, race, color, religion. You know, maybe it's God's way of saying, hey, listen, learn to get along or get the hell on.
That's a thought. Oh, someone mentioned that and I forgot to mention this, that in terms of positive social media, the WCEG Network, because there are many different shows and many different topics. Like I said, we are the worldwide empowerment group. So communities, watching, that's one way of getting positive social media, watching the WCEG Network for all the many varied shows we have. We have shows on all different topics, and they're educational, affirming, and positive. So please watch the other WCEG network shows.
Absolutely.
Outstanding.
We cover the gamut. Cover the gamut.
Wow. So
from entertainment to education.
Exactly. Politics, everything, your issues and answers.
Politics and politricks, as my boss would say. I think Miss Rodgers would like that one.
Oh my God.
So we are at the end of another show. It's been very informative. Thank you to our host and co-host, and thank you to our listening audience. And we look forward to meeting back with you in 2 weeks for Mind Matters on WCEG Network, where again, we will be discussing a topic of relevance to the community relating to mental health. So we'll see you back here at this place and location in 2 weeks. Good night, everybody. Yeah.
Good night.
Good night, Doc. Good night,
Thank you.
Dawn.